Once upon a time in India, a really long story unfolded about how the population dynamics happened over the years. We are talking about from 1950 all the way to 2022. So let's dig into this tale and see how India's population changed during that time. So everyone used to know that China is the most populous country in the world, but recently India overtook China with more than 1.4 billion people, becoming the world's most populous country. So in 2022, there were about 431 people living in every square kilometer in India. That's a slight increase of about 0.68% from the year before. India's population density has been going up a lot, mainly because more people are being born, more people are moving to cities, and people aren't spread out evenly across the country. By 2022, it had even surpassed 450 people per square kilometer. So in the last slide, we talked about how the population of India is going up. But when we look at the data in our population trend over time chart, we can see that it's not growing as fast as it did like 30 or 40 years ago. One big reason for this is something called the replacement rate. That's when the number of babies born is enough to replace the number of people who die, keeping the population pretty steady. Around the world, the replacement rate is about 2.1, which means on an average, each woman has two kids. But in India, it's a bit less than that. When we look at how fast the population is growing, we can see here, and also the density of population, we can see here, the chart clearly depicts the population explosion that happened from 1950s. But as we can see from the previous slide, the explosion of the 50s has significantly reduced from 1980, mainly because of Indian policies influencing economic growth without imposing policies like China. So when we compare this rural population versus urban population, it's pretty clear that the cities are growing faster. Their growth rates are around 31.5% to 31.8%, while in rural areas it's lower. Plus, even though the growth rate in rural areas has slowed down compared to the last decade, urban areas are still speeding up. This shows that even though the overall population growth is slowing down, more and more people are moving to cities, and that's playing an important role in shaping India's demographic landscape. Well, earlier in this presentation, we saw that India is now world's most populous country, but at the same time, the fertility rate is declining. From 6 children in 1950, it has dropped to a little less than 2 in 2022, indicating a significant reversal in the demographic trends. And also, there was a study which indicated that close to 10% of Indian households now opt only for one child, and this growing trend is more prominent in urban India, which notably contributes to the major population in India. If we talk about the infant mortality rate, India used to have one of the highest infant mortality rates in the world, which is also a key indicator of health and development of a country. Poverty, education, and healthcare access issues could be the possible reasons for a premature death, but the mortality rates of India has improved considerably during the last 7 decades, where the infant mortality rates decreased from 189.63 to 27.7. Um, as we can see, the chart here shows India's life expectancy rate over the last 70 years. For someone born in 1950s in India, they would have an average life expectancy of 30 or 35.21 years, but now that life expectancy is more than 2 times longer. And with the decline in fertility along with the increases in life expectancy, we are going to witness a transformation in the age demographics of India, which also brings to another challenge, the increasing number of older persons in the population. Over the years, India has experienced a major shift in both birth and death rates. While the birth rates has gradually declined due to the factors such as urbanization and family planning initiatives, also the death rate has seen a downward trend. There are peaks in birth rate around the years 1950 and 1990. On the other hand, the death rate seems to be on a slight increase in recent years. So, if we talk about the migration rate, India has a long history of migration beyond its borders. But after India's independence, migration peaked in the 1970s, leading to a surge of new opportunities across the world. But we can see a steady decline in the migration after that because at that time the economic conditions were getting better and the people making people less likely to move abroad. But this seems to be shifting again in the recent years. We can already see a new rise in migration rates. So the data set shows that how the India's population has gone up and down over the years, it reminds us that a lot of things like age, where people live, and the government rules all affect the population growth. So the story of India's population keeps going, changing every year, and hopefully making things better for everyone in the future. So thank you guys.